So tonight we're looking at the gospel changes everything. I was going to be talking about something else, but yesterday it was like God just had a whole different plan. This is going to be a 4-week series, and we're going to continue to unpack that. But tonight we're going to talk about this specifically. The gospel. And it's crazy to me how Sheree and Dan, what they shared, and I didn't know what they were going to share, just really correlates exactly with the word that I felt to share tonight. So, our first question when we do missions trips and all this type of stuff, when I look at short-term missions trips, I see them as an opportunity to go there and to serve the contacts, because those people are there, these missionaries, 24/7 all the time. And so we look at it as an opportunity. Hey, we can go there for 10 days. We can work our butts off. We can be tired. We can even maybe get sick, all this type of stuff, but do everything we can to strengthen and lift up the arms of those missionaries who are there all the time, so that when we walk away, they can say, wow, we felt refreshed. They helped the ministry we're pouring into every day. But even greater than that, there's something even more that encompasses what takes place when we step out and when we go. But in my process of thinking about missions trips and even community outreach and all these things, you almost have to ask the question, what can we give these people? What can we really give these people, these individuals? I was talking with one of the missionaries there in the Dominican. Her name is Joy, and her husband's name was Mike, and they worked with us the whole time. We were in her truck, and we were just driving through a very poverty-stricken area. You guys saw some of the pictures up there, and where we got to build this house. Just so much poverty. So we're driving, and she's talking with me. They've been there for a year, but they've done tons of work through the years there in the Dominican. And so she said this to me. She said, what can we give these people? She said, this is the question I ask myself. We build houses, schools. We give them money and resources, and yet still we come back 5 years later, and it seems nothing has changed. She said, except those who took hold of the gospel those 5 years ago. When we come back, there's a change in them, in their whole social structure, in their family structure, in every way. Then I remember years back when I was in Africa with a missionary. His name's Tori Rasmussen. When he comes and visits, I normally always have him speak. He is just an amazing person. He is 27 years old, and he's planted over 30 churches in unreached villages and tribes in Africa, in the bush. I'm talking the bush. And he is as white as can be with blonde hair, but speaks perfect Swahili. It's awesome. And he can rap in it too. But we were going through this village, and he builds roads, and he gets in there, and once he builds a road, he's able to plant a church. And I just said to him, I said, there's so much poverty here as well. It seems that there's so much loss here. What do you bring them, Tori? What makes this change? And this is what he said to me. He said, there's 2 African men. There's a story, what he has seen in a village there. There's 2 African men. They had the same hut, same lives, same land, same type of family, same economy. Yet one was different, because one took hold of the gospel. And so in those same huts, there was one guy who was there sitting in his own urine, in his own feces, abusing his wife and children, not providing for them, a drunkard. Yet in that same exact identical looking hut, right there next to it, when a man came out of there, he had a collared shirt on, his shirt tucked in, a tie, took care of his family, did everything he could to provide for his children the food and the resources they needed, loved them. And Tori said that man is the man, and was the man who accepted Christ into his life, who took hold of the gospel. Something changed. See, the gospel transforms. The gospel transforms. Internationally and within our community, we can build schools. We did that. Listen, I'm not going against building houses and schools. Our Dominican team, how hard did we work to raise the $8,000 to build and furnish a home? I mean, we worked so hard to raise that, because there's an importance in that. But we can go to different countries, we can go to our communities, and we can build schools, and we can give money for resources, and we can feed the poor, and we can rescue people from danger. But still, This is not the fullness of the gospel. It's actually only a small part of it. Actually, in all reality, it's simply an avenue for us to share the story of salvation. See, the story of salvation never changes. It's one of redemption, restoration, and blessing. We have to realize that. And actually, after tonight, these next few weeks, we're going to go through each one of those: redemption, restoration, and blessing, and what they mean. But not tonight. You're supposed to say, oh, but no one cares. Great. Heard that story enough. But listen, when we look at the story of salvation, but more importantly, the gospel, I think we often forget. Many times we forget the power and the truth of the gospel. By the way, these boxes and this cross all make sense. Some of you out there are like, what is that? What is that? When is he going to talk about that? Look, I am. Don't get distracted by these amazing looking boxes. They're so creative. So I was in Walmart today, like building them as I was purchasing them, and people were probably like, what is this guy doing? Then the lady at the register's like, oh, are you moving? And initially, I wasn't going to lie, but you know how like initially like, oh, the right answer is to say yes right now. But I'm like, wait a second, I'm not moving. How did I get sucked into that? Register lady. But no, I just said, no, I'm using them at my church tonight. And like, I wasn't expecting that, so it just came out weird. Like, oh, I'm using it at the church for examples. She's like, what? I'm like, God bless you. Thank you. You need to pay. Oh, yes. It's tax exempt form. Okay. But many times we forget the power and the truth of the gospel. Maybe this is because of our lack of knowledge. Maybe we haven't pursued. Maybe we haven't deepened our understanding of what the gospel is, or maybe we've never heard about it before, and so it's our lack of knowledge that's why we kind of forget or don't even know. Maybe it's not fully understanding it. If only taking it this far, and still God has so much more he wants to show us about how the gospel can truly change everything. Or maybe it's familiarity. Maybe we've become too familiar with it. For those of you who've grown up in church, it's like, yeah, it's the gospel. Cool. We've heard this a lot. Let's talk about something different. So it becomes so familiar to us that we forget the heartbeat of what it is. We forget that it's our bloodline. We forget that it does truly change everything. Who we are, who we're becoming, and who we'll be. But there's another one. Maybe we get distractions with other good things. For example, yeah, the boxes are just about to begin. Maybe movements. Social justice, as we term it. We get distracted by all these good things. We built a house. We fed the homeless. Now, like I said before, I believe so strongly in doing those things, in loving in action and in truth, as John the Apostle tells us. But that's not the main thing. Here at the table, we every other month, we have an outreach to the community. We want to go there and be the practical hands and feet of Jesus. But there's something important, because sometimes I think we become more passionate about the movement than the person of Christ himself. The very one whose love inspired the movement. We forget. And we get so distracted. And we actually take hold of that so much. Listen, those things, I view them and I look at them as things that become blocks, for instance. Cardboard blocks. The cross. The real cross, right? Jesus Christ. When you look at this cross, I want you to see Jesus Christ. All that he's done, who he is. But here's the deal. Sometimes we have these things, like, And I'm not mocking these things. Listen here. Don't choose to just listen for a second. Listen to the whole thing. Purifying water. It's a great thing. We actually met a young man, a missionary there at the YWAM base in the Dominican Republic. He said, this is what I feel called to do. Go back to Haiti and purify water. That's awesome. Purify water. And so we put this, yes, purify water. That is amazing. Amazing. Oh, volunteering your time. Yo, man, I give up my time. I go every Saturday to Big Brother and Big Sister. I mentor kids and I do this. So you're volunteering, giving up your time. I go, I give blood, I work the blood drive, I do all these great things. Sweet. Awesome. Oh, man, feeding the poor. Feeding the poor. Taking that action. Feeding the poor, giving to those who don't have anything, providing for them. Oh, man, giving to charity. That's awesome. Giving of your money. You've worked so hard this whole week. You took a percentage of your money and you are giving it to charity. Giving that money away. Truly an awesome, awesome thing to do. Oh, rescuing from sex trafficking. A lot of awareness is really being brought up about this. Rescuing people. You can watch so many documentaries and it will change your life and your perspective when you see how sick this world really is. Rescuing women, children from sex trafficking. That's awesome. Building a house. We just did it. We built the house in the Dominican. Building a house for those maybe who have nothing. Habitat for Humanity, what an awesome ministry. I've worked with them a ton. Building homes for those who can't afford it. And the last one, fill the blank. Whatever you want, whatever you've done maybe in your life, in the midst of that. But when I look here, this is something God has spoken to my heart. Suddenly these things have blocked out, covered up the cross and Jesus. And then we do something really dangerous. You know what we do then? Maybe we sprinkle it in a little here and there, or maybe we try to create our own. So we basically create, oh look, we create our own cross. And this is Jesus. Let me show you. I practiced this. There it is. We give people that cross. Hey man, this is Jesus. And then people wonder, why is it so shallow? Why is your faith so shallow? Why is it just momentary? Why is it just one moment by the next moment? Because we've built these things, we've put so much focus on the movement, on this and that, giving to charity, feeding the poor, building a house, rescuing from sin. And look at this. And then when we sprinkle in a little bit of, yeah, and Jesus can do this and Jesus can do that, we're just putting that cross there. Yeah, I'm a Christian and I do that. I'm not mocking. Hear my heart here. I am not mocking, because if you look, and this is not in pride, but if you look at my life, all these things up here I have worked and partnered with and I believe fully in. But suddenly, even within my own life, I found that I was giving people a shallow Jesus because it was the one that I was creating myself. And there it is. So what is the gospel then? The word gospel means good news. The gospel is Jesus Christ. The person of Jesus Christ. He is the gospel. 1 Corinthians 15, 1-8. Paul says this. Now, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you received and on which you have taken your stand. By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I preached to you, otherwise you have believed in vain. Now listen. For what I have received I pass on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas and to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, the apostles, and the last of all, he appeared to me also. Now listen. Paul starts off by saying, don't forget the gospel. And then what does he tell us right there in verse 3? He goes through who Jesus is. So back to the statement. The gospel changes everything. So if Jesus Christ is the gospel, then Jesus Christ changes everything. Jesus Christ changes everything. This doesn't change everything. Cherie said it when she was sharing her testimony. I built a house for a whole day, but still something inside of me felt empty. Something inside of me didn't feel fulfilled. But then that next day when she came, Jesus, what do you have for me? We saw her pick up a girl who she didn't tell you was lit on fire by her brothers in a mosquito net, and this small little precious girl had burns all the way down her legs, disfigured with her foot turned, growth upon her ears and on her face, a frown, until Cherie, for days, every day got there, picked her up, kissed her, loved her, and Cherie was in the corner praying Jesus over this girl. Yeah, she held her, but she didn't just give her hugs and kisses. She was speaking Jesus, Jesus over her. Many times people want to do good, and they do, but they lose sight of the person of Christ. See, Jesus does an eternal work inside of us that only an infinite God can do. Only he can do it. We can do as much as we want, but we can't change everything. Only the infinite, almighty God, Jesus Christ, can change us eternally. I'm going to invite the band to make their way up here at this time. And as they do, I want to just share with you, in the closing of this, how Christ makes all things new. He begins the change of everything because he makes all things new. In 2 Corinthians 5:17, it says there this, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, and the new is here. In Revelation 21:4-5, listen to this picture, what John is seeing. He says, Jesus, he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. And then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Jesus has made everything new, is making everything new, will continue to make everything new, but it's Jesus. See, if you take Jesus away, you take the gospel away. If you take the gospel away, you take real, authentic, eternal, and internal change away. Now, this is the last thing I want to show you. Because like I said, these things aren't wrong. They're not wrong in and of themselves. When these things are put in the right order, when we rescue children from sex trafficking, when we build a house for those who are in need, when we feed the poor, like Jesus said, you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. When we give away to charity, when we volunteer our time to help and love others, when we purify water for those, but with the hope and sight that we could bring them water from Christ, that he says, you'll never thirst again. This is what happens. See, that's why I said it doesn't negate. It's a question of order. See, when we do these things and we put them in the right order, and then when we lift up the cross, it becomes a platform. It becomes a stage. These things are vital. These things are important for us and for the church to be. But we can't lose sight of the person of Jesus Christ, because he's the only one who can change everything. We cannot lose sight of that. And that's why Jesus says in John 12:32, And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people unto me. So guys, I speak to you as a church. Let us be people who don't get overwhelmed by the movement and lose sight of the very one whose love has inspired what we do. So that when we live our life in action and in truth, that we'll always live it pointing to the cross, pointing to Jesus, because this changes lives. And we can't forget that, church, because we live in a world and we live in a society that all it wants to do is keep pushing Jesus out of the way. That's all it wants to do. Hey, do all these great works, man. Do all these great works, man. Let's just put the cross over here. Just put it in the background. It's great. Cover it up. But let's not be that church, because as we're going to continue this series, and we're not going to go into it right now, but we're going to talk about the story of salvation. We're going to unpack it. What does this mean? The gospel is Jesus. Well, what has he done for me? He has redeemed us. He has redeemed us. He has restored us. And he blesses us. And we're going to continue that. But right now, before the worship band comes up here and they're going to lead in just a moment, just take this time, close your eyes or do whatever you need to do to kind of just get, even in the midst of a crowd, alone with God in this moment. And just kind of reflect. I think reflection is so important. We can call it meditation as well, time to reflect upon God and who he is in our own lives. Godly meditation and saying, Lord, where in my life have I gotten overwhelmed by the movement and lost sight of you? Or maybe I've never taken hold of you. And Christ right now is saying, get these distractions, get these things out of my way, put them in the right order so that you can have me. Not just a philosophy, no, that you could have me, intimacy with me. Intimacy with the Son of God, Jesus Christ. And just take this moment as you reflect upon that.